And it just blew my 10-year-old mind. I'd never seen anything like this before. I am, of course, talking about the seminal classic from 1981, Heavy Metal, based on the magazine of the same name, the fantasy sci-fi anthology magazine. Great stuff. I love this movie. And I didn't actually get around to seeing the entire thing until about 10 years later when it was finally released on, well, at the time, VHS and Laserdisc. I did not have the Laserdisc, but I did have the VHS edition. And I thought it was great. I really enjoyed it because around that time also I had started reading the magazine. And I really liked the magazine because, I mean, it was a lot darker and edgier and sort of racier sci-fi and fantasy, but the bottom line is it was sci-fi and fantasy stuff. And some of the artwork in it was just amazing. So I really enjoyed the movie because I feel like the movie really captures the essence of what makes the magazine so interesting. You get all these different art styles and all these different types of stories, and it's just, you know, it's just a wellspring of creativity for independent artists and writers. And the movie really captured the essence of that by having, again, an anthology format and having a variety of different animation styles and such, and I always really liked it. But it was funny seeing bits and pieces of this as a kid because some of the imagery from it just kind of burned into my brain because it was just unlike anything I'd ever seen before. You know, seeing cartoon characters having sex and naked animated bouncing boobs and whatnot. It was it was pretty mind-blowing for a 10-year-old boy. Now, the thing I wanted to mention about this is, now one of the things I wanted to touch on is the fact that we really don't see a lot of movies like this anymore. I mean, it's almost all CG stuff right now, or really slick, well-produced, you know, perfect animation type things. The thing I like about movies like Heavy Metal and other movies from that era is they were essentially independent films done by small animation studios a lot of the time. This, I think, was one of the few exceptions because this was actually put out by it was Columbia Pictures backed it, so they had a little bit more money to spend on some of the independent features. But the thing I like about these types of movies is they just have this kind of, I don't know, raw quality to them, and it just sort of pure artistry quality to them. Because watching them, you can't help but stop and think for a moment periodically that, hey, this is all hand-drawn. This wasn't done with computers. There was no shortcuts here. This was people sitting at their desks, slaving away for hours and hours and hours, creating these amazing animated worlds. And so, from nothing. I mean, they painted backgrounds and drawing the cells and painting on the back of the cells. I mean, it was a huge, laborious, time-consuming process, and you had to have the patience of a saint to do it, man. And looking at movies like this, it's really amazing what some of these... And looking at movies like this just shows how much could be done in the medium. Now that said, granted, some of the animation in this is quite dated by today's standards, and some of the animation techniques would look pretty rough by today's standards. But back in 1981 when this came out, I mean, it was pretty creative stuff, you know, and you just don't see movies like this anymore. So how is the Blu-ray, you're probably wondering? Well, I mean, as I say, due to the different animation styles and whatnot, it's a pretty rough-looking film to begin with. But as far as being faithful to the original film, source and being an accurate transfer, I think this is as good as Heavy Metal's ever going to look, to be honest. I mean, you can't make silk from a sow's ear. I mean, the film looks the way it looks, largely because of the way it was made back in the day. And, you know, if you're expecting something pristine and beautiful like a lot of today's animated features, that's not what you're going to get with Heavy Metal. But honestly, I think the fact that it's a little rough around the edges just adds to the charm of it, because the magazine was very rough around the edges a lot of the time. And with different art styles and whatnot. And I think it just adds to the overall experience. I have not seen the sequel, Heavy Metal 2000. Heavy Metal 2000 was not an anthology film, it was just a single extended story about some fantasy warrior chick who was apparently the chief of the magazine. But I have heard that they're actually doing a new Heavy Metal movie, or they've been talking about it for a while, that will be more in style of this one. Which will be more in the style of this one, namely an anthology series with a variety of different directors.